Hello, apa khabar? Welcome to Virtually Peranakan Fest 2025, organized by Peranakan Sayang. It's our 6th year organizing this 2-day online festival with presentations to share and celebrate our Peranakan culture with presenters from around the region. My name is Baba Alvin Un, your festival organizer and host from Peranakan Sayang in Singapore. Thank you, Kamsia, for joining us. We would love to hear from you. Please say hello in the comments and do let us know where you are watching this live stream from. And do share your questions and opinions too. Joining me for this program, I have my co-host from Malacca. Please welcome Baba Cedric Tan. Hello, Baba.
Hey, how do you do again? Good
Kochi
afternoon,
Kodadu.
everybody. Yeah.
Today, the session very interesting tau. We got our kawan, Baba Peter Lee.
Yes, susah
Ah,
mau dapat dia tahu.
yalah. So busy that fella, eh?
Yeah, all over the world,
Yeah,
appear in
all over the world.
documentary lah. Aduh,
Macam-macam lah dia. We tabik sama dia.
Abid definitely. And
Okay,
but
so
but
let's...
you know,
Ah,
he he is a renowned researcher as well as also a historian as well. So I think it's going to be a very fun session right after this, especially when he's talking about sarung kebaya.
yeah, that's why this one is called about, oi, don't forget the sarong, because there's so much attention on the kebaya kan. So
Yes,
now don't forget the
definitely.
sarong lah. So
Must
let's bring Peter on. Peter. Masuklah
Hello.
dia.
Hi,
Tengok.
Alvin and Cedric.
good
Hello.
afternoon.
Thank you for this invitation to Peranakan Sayang. Thank you. And hey, I love your intro music. It's so
Thank you. It's an
really good.
original song.
Love it.
Love it. Thank you. So, what are you going to share today, Peter?
Yeah, so we had this discussion and you asked me what we could do. And this is we're all celebrating the kebaya as with this, a nomination to the UNESCO list. And I always feel it's a good time to remember also that Batik had been similarly nominated. And in terms of the ensemble, it's often the neglected, the Cinderella of the costume or the fashion.
Whole ensemble,
And
right?
it was just a kind of a thing, just a little conversation to think on about it, and also about Batik and my personal experience with collecting, and how, yes, to remember the neglected sarong amid the kebaya mania. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this all started in 2011. So now thinking about it, that's
Wow.
14 years ago when we had this exhibition at the Peranakan Museum. And I just sharing this because it's it was featured in the New York Times, of course, the Straits Times as well. And then in 2015, this book, which was like 10 years' work probably, was published. It's out of print now, and I understand that a new edition will come out by the middle of next year. So going back to the story, how this all came about personally for me, my parents, obviously. My mother was a great collector of things Peranakan. She was, I call her the hoarder, and I was her enabler. She also loved, sarong kebaya. And when my father became president in the 90s, she had many opportunities to wear this. And in fact, that's the time that I started looking out for them for her. And so from her, I inherited this perspective on beautifully made things. And from my father, a sense of history in the past and stories from the past. So these two things combine to create this curiosity in me. Next slide. So, sorry. Oh, Alvin, maybe it's better if you handle the...
Okay, sure.
I'm going to be pressing the wrong things.
Okay.
So I grew up in a house full of Nonya wear. And what was interesting, I think it was people who were outside slightly. My mother was, her adopted father was Peranakan, but she didn't really grow up with these things, and often told me that she admired them visiting relatives' homes, kebayas, all this Nyonya wear. And so she was possibly one of the first collectors. The collectors, I believe, were always on the outside. My father and his siblings, for example, they didn't really care for all this old stuff. And my grandma used all the kamchings in the kitchen for salt, and often they were cracked and not really valued very much. But she appreciated the beauty being never having grown up with them. So she told me that in the 50s she would go to Malacca to my father's side is all from Malacca, so to attend funerals mostly. And there was a lot of sitting around, and she would wander the streets of Hiran Street at that time, now Jalan Tun Tajilok, right? And there were all these stores, junk shops, secondhand vintage shops, and that's where she would pick them up. She said they used to just be placed on the floor, and she would buy all these kamchings, teapots, and all that. So her collection was built up from the 50s. So this is her in the 60s, and yeah, we just grew up with this stuff around us. Next slide. Interesting. I just rediscovered these photos. It was a fashion show my mother did in 1976 in May. I think it was always like these conferences coming, and they needed some heritage shows. So here, my mother organized a fashion show, kebaya show, and I found a New Nation report about this event. So right from the early days, she was very interested in the Sarong kebaya. Next slide. Then fast forward to 2000. So I didn't really know anything about it apart from that my mother collected this stuff, and we had boxes of kebayas and antique textiles. She had antique silk robes and all kinds of things. So come to the late 90s, I was doing a project for the Fullerton Hotel and sourcing for antiques for this project in Jakarta, and I hooked up with my old friend Chosi Latu, who's a fashion designer, and his really close friend Agam Riyadi, who's now a famous interior designer, and their late friend Paulus Pelohi, who was the designer Iwan Tirta's right-hand man. So hooking up with them, I was thrown into the deep end of the Indonesian batik world. And it opened my eyes to, the beauty of antique textiles and everything. So I even remember the very first time they took me to an antique shop. The owner was brightened up when they walked in and took out a huge bunch of keys and passed it to a helper. So the good stuff was always locked at the back. And my jaw dropped. It was a completely different quality of textiles that appeared when the serious collectors came. And that's when I got into it. And here's, I was taken to Iwan Tirta's workshop. And next. And invited to his events. He had these amazing fashion shows in the Yogyakarta Kraton. This was a kind of magnificent event. The dancers' costumes were all designed by him, etc. So it was this amazing world. Next. These are the costumes he designed for this special dance performance at the Kraton Yogyakarta. Then I started to buy also contemporary batiks by Iwan Tirta. So at the opening of the Peranakan Legacy at the ACM, which was then now in Armenian Street, with the then director Kenson Kwok. My parents were the guests of honor, and my mother in an Iwan Tirta sarong and selendang. Next. And similarly, in 2011, at the opening of the Sarong Kebaya exhibition, my mother in Iwan Tirta sarong as well. And, for her also, and like for my grandmother, we were raised, she always understood that from my grandmother that the star was always the batik, and the kebaya often, the kebaya should complement the sarong. So that was the style of my mother and grandmother. So you see that she's just wearing very plain kebayas, and even in a fashion show earlier, she would pair a fancy batik with a simpler, elegant kebaya to show off the sarong. then around that time, I found that as a collector and as a historian, it was really important to get to know and meet everybody involved in the business and in the collecting of batik. So here is Limpo Hin from Batik Limping in Kedung Wuni in 2004. Next. Then I went to visit her neighbor. She introduced me to Wee Bi Guan, who was the last of his family to make batik. Also several generations in Kedung Wuni. It's all on this one street. And then the next slide on the same street, of course, Vidyanti Vijaya and her mother, Istianti Setiono, they were the daughter-in-law and granddaughter of Wee Su Jun, and still carrying on the legacy today. I think Vidyanti just had a big exhibition in Jakarta showcasing the 3 generations of work, which is very beautiful. And this is us together in 2005. I went to visit several times, placed orders. It took about a year at that time. I think now it takes several years for an order to be completed. They have a backlog, I think partly because of the shortage of workers nowadays. And this is with one of the orders that had been completed in 2005. Sadly, Vidyanti's mother passed away last year. Next. And I also serendipitously met the sort of batik mafia in the Netherlands. None other than this wonderful scholar and writer, Alit Jayasubrata, who is now 90, lives in Rotterdam. I went to see her last year and she's still going on strong. But she wrote some of the most iconic books, and she was a curator in Rotterdam for the Indonesian art. And was this beautiful book that was written in Dutch on batik and recently translated into English. Something like Batik and its Universe or something, but Alit Jayasubrata. Next, and of course, the great, her ex-husband, Harman Feldhausen, and together with his son Weird, he was a big collector of batik, especially batik pesisir from the North Coast, and he published that amazing book, Batik Belanda, that opened our eyes to a very different kind of batik, not just the North Coast, not just the Central Javanese pieces, but this entire different universe of North Coast batik, which the Peranakans were favored. Next. And Harman co-wrote a book of, I think, Fabric of Enchantment with Rens Heringa. They were very close friends and they were so passionate about batik. They loved each other. They argued frequently and, very headstrong, and both wonderful people, both now gone. Rens was absolutely amazing, a good friend. She would often pass through Singapore. Her husband and children live in Indonesia, but she lived in the Netherlands, and had very strong views about batik. Quite often, I would have arguments with both Harman and Rens. I didn't really share all their views, but we had amazing conversations, and it's really sad that I don't have my sparring partners anymore, except for Alit. Yeah. And then next, through my good friend Eddie Sutandio standing next to me, I was very fortunate to meet Panembahan Hadjonegoro, or Gotik Swan, the iconic batik maker from the Sukarno era. He started Batik Indonesia with President Sukarno, and a completely new style that combined the classic Javanese court patterns with the bright colors of Pekalongan. He came from an old Chinese Kapitan family, and I believe, I might not be 100% accurate about that, but a very well-connected family, and knew the ins and outs of the Javanese courts. He was deeply entrenched in Solo culture, like many of the Solo Peranakan elite. Like we also featured such a family in Batik Nonias, the exhibition last year at the Peranakan Museum, the second generation Nyonya Wee Kok Sing came from Solo and understood deeply court culture there. And then my adventures took me to Lasem in 07 and had the wonderful, again, the privilege of meeting this incredibly passionate batik maker called Naomi Susilowati Setiono, who's now passed away. She really, really struggled to make batik. And, it was really, heartbreak listening to her struggles. Sometimes she told me she would sell batiks to some high-up people in Jakarta. She would go there to collect the money and would be waiting hours and never got paid. And she would just take the bus back over several hours. And it was very sad. But in Lasem, it was that kind of level of passion to keep making batik. What was very interesting, Lasem batiks had changed over the centuries to more modern styles. And she was trying to revive this older style using chemical dyes and making these big artistic pieces in 07. Next. And at that time, here I am next to, in black, Cynthia Hofer, who I think runs a kind of a batik group as well in social, Facebook or something, I'm not sure. And next to her is Putri Gusti who is Gusti Putri, who is a Mangkunegaran princess, and her husband Tunku Abu Bakar. Yeah, her full name you can see, Gusti Raden Ayu Retno Astrini. But known as Putri. She lives in Johor, and I've still learning from her all the intricacies of court batik. But her and her family, her mother, were all great patrons, and of course her lineage of the Mangkunegaran rulers were all great patrons of batik arts. And another good friend I met at that time, I learned so much from her, Ibu Asmoro Damai. She started the first batik boutique called Parang Akik in Jakarta in the 70s, I believe, and was one of the first to translate, batik, which had only been known as on kain and sarong, into yardage to be cut into tailored clothing. So that was pretty revolutionary at that time. And so she is also very important in batik history, and also a big collector of art. And of course, come to 2012, actually I first met the three Hendro Matono sisters in 2011, and we worked over several years, in fact, 2011 till the exhibition 2024. This amazing gift from their family of 100 pieces made by three generations by their mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, and these have been donated to the Peranakan Museum and has ended up in the Batik Nonias show, which we worked on last year. Next. And just this year, I was invited to Lasem by the Museum Nyah Lasem, and they are really struggling to preserve an amazing archive of documents from a batik making family that spans from the 1910s to the 70s. It was amazing. My jaw dropped, this archive. But anyway, so I went to their museum and we had a workshop session, and she took me around to meet some of the current batik makers. So this is Po Katrin Nyo. She has a batik label called Batik Katrin's B. And the fascinating thing is her son, Dr. Ronald Setiawan, has quit medicine. I think he's a dentist, if I'm not mistaken, in Jakarta, and moved home to help his mother produce batik. And I was just found that very moving. Next slide. So this is one of her pieces. They still really struggle to make batik tulis in Lasem, with pieces that referencing this bang biro or red and blue, or bang biro hijau, red, blue, and green batiks in the old Lasem style. I also met this other family, from husband and wife, Vina and Rudy Siswantio of Kidang. Oh, my eyes are so bad. Kidang, can you see? Kidang Mas, I think.
Yeah.
Kidang Mas. So again, they are professionals from Jakarta, moved back, and Rudy actually dyes the batik himself. In fact, you can see him wearing the gloves.
Yeah.
I interrupted him to ask for this photo, but you can see he and some workers behind, they are literally doing the dyeing. And, hats off to these amazing people giving up professional careers for the love of family heritage and national heritage, national Indonesian heritage. So I'm just going to skim through this because these are all photos from the exhibition and published in the Batik Nonya book. But again, it's to just re-look at how important, and the batiks could be in the whole setup, the whole ensemble that put together, right? So this is an early kebaya. The cut is exactly the same as the earliest kebayas, all of the same cut as the baju panjang or kebaya panjang with the besak on the gussets on the sleeves, and and also these sort of added lapel panels that you see how baju panjang is cut. But look at the amazing range of batik at that time. So this is a Turkey cut by Metzela, Eurasian batik maker from Pekalongan, but possibly made for a Peranakan client, but who knows? Because at that time, batiks with cards and just Western playing cards were also fashionable, and so this was kind of a take on that. Next, and you also had these amazing imitation kind of ikat patterns. They call it nitik, in a very kind of, this is called Banyumas style, but these are very beautiful. These are all from the last quarter of the 19th century. And with kebayas, you see the variation also at that time. It was really a fashion. So you could see lace, you could see machine lace, you could see hand lace, you could see all kinds of needlework being sewn onto a kebaya. Again, the emphasis, there's always the kebaya, the batik, sarong is the star. So the kebaya was often very pale colored to show off, but often with the most elegant needlework. But the emphasis was to really show off the batik. So this is also another Metzela combining these ikat-like patterns, and yeah, just a beautiful, elegant blue and white. Next. And then sometimes you see these combinations of Art Nouveau patterns with the Lar or Garuda wings from the classic court design repertoire. All these from the, what we call the Belanda style or of Pekalongan. So the hybrid style that emerged first among the Eurasian batik makers, but everybody started producing it very quickly. So it became a cross-cultural style produced in workshops from all communities. Amazing geometric check, imitation check produced by Eliza van Soylen, paired with a kebaya trimmed with handmade lace from Palembang. Palembang lace was very famous at that time and sold as long pieces of they call them edgings. Yeah. Tambalan pattern also produced in Pekalongan by a Eurasian batik maker. I just wanted to show this combination of the details, how finely hand-drawn they are, and paired with just the most elegant kebayas in plain colors to show off the batiks. Next. And then you see the Chinese ladies who had been more wearing the baju panjangs shifting to these European Eurasian style kebayas, but their own you started to see a lot of Chinese tailor shops offering to make kebayas. You see these ads in the newspapers like Xianpo, and what you start to see is a slightly different style. So these involve a lot of netting. In fact, almost half and the back of the these kebayas are all with net and applique, very fine applique patterns, and they could be flowers, it could be dragons, dragon on the left, flowers on the right. So this is already a much more Peranakan taste kebaya, but also still in white. And then you start to see these shorter and these lacier kebayas appearing in the Strait settlements. Also because we often forget the close connections that between Singapore and Batavia and Java. Many Peranakan families actually in Singapore trace their origins to Java, and we see them still in the surnames with OOI, OEY, etc. Lim, yeah. Yeah.
Including mine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So we need to remember these connections, and often I think we focus so much on the Strait settlements, we forget that actually Java was and Sumatra were very, very strong links in Singapore as well. And Riau, amazing, some old families from Riau in Singapore as well, and all the connections and links to all these communities. So naturally we see, I think this top is actually from Penang, but then it's this Red Riding Hood. These popular fairy tales from the West, Hans Christian Andersen, etc., were in Bangsawan and became like even Snow White was a Bangsawan. So popular topics. And what's so fascinating for me is that before you think about it, like it's only now that anime and cartoon images you see on Louis Vuitton and all that, and to think that so modern already, and people didn't care whether you thought Western people thought it was fashionable at that time, but this was really fashion forward. Yeah. Next, the left is a Penang silk kebaya with beautiful chain stitch. These are two Penang shorter kebayas from the 20s, 30s. And you see, rather than the whites, the introduction of color, but again, always pale. And this, again, as I said, keep repeating to show off the beauty of the batik. Next. Then come to the 30s, you see a completely different silhouette. You get this long, tapered silhouette, and the most incredible sewing machine work. The softest, I don't know how they do it. I've never seen anything made today that is as soft as this. It's all sewing machine lace, sometimes combining lace and sewing machine lace, paired with what became very popular at that time in the 20s and 30s is Tiga Negri batiks. But the finest examples like you see here has no repeat pattern. It's really mind-boggling. Every line, every border has a different pattern. Next. And then you see the subtle echoes from the background or the tanahan of this sarong, which has a kind of chrysanthemum-like petal pattern reflected in the kebaya, as well as the flowers. So there were subtle ways that kebayas were designed to match a beautiful batik like this. Next. And just to show the effect of the back and this beautiful sort of triangular shapes that create such an elegant effect. I also think that we often forget, when I was mounting this kebaya, for example, the level that the kebaya had to be worn. Obviously the old ones, in the old days, ladies would tie the sarong quite high up. In fact, sometimes even empire line level. And this is often proven by the height that the embroidery would go, because it would look very strange if you sort of tied it lower. Then you see this. So there's the see-through effect of the batik and the lacework of the kebaya was a very important aesthetic as well, and something not paid much attention to these days. Sometimes through the batik, I think it really needs to be adjusted that everything looks very elegant and intentional. Next. So we see the same effect, and of course the transparency is always a problem, but I think it looks better through the batik than the top, So I think the higher you put it, the more this beautiful lacy effect becomes evident. And again, this is all incredibly crazy sewing machine embroidery on a level that is not achieved today anymore today. You can literally crush it in your hand. This comes to the post-war era, and we see brightening colors, and also sarongs become much more vivid, and this is all due to chemical dyes and changing tastes. So we see this Wisuchun kain panjang. Also, kain panjangs become much more popular post-war rather than sarongs. And looking at old photos, they're worn two ways, sometimes folded to the left, sometimes folded to the right. In some pictures, you see the nonias wearing them inconsistently. So there, there isn't any proper way to wear this. I think it just depended on the wearer. And I asked GT Lai about this some years ago, and he also confirmed that he remembered that it would be a very organic thing which way a lady would prefer, because sometimes it was just more comfortable for them left over right or right over left. And it seemed pretty random. So come to the 50s, we see this changing tastes in colors, but still the kebaya was so elegantly matched tone-wise. And I love the way you see this pale lavender, that mustard green and the yellow and a touch of pink. And this is really reflected in the kebaya as well. So it's not accidental. There was a certain palette in terms of kebayas of that era and of batiks of the era, and kebayas were toned to complement all these colors. And here we see the same kind of elegance with very fine and expensive batiks and kebayas that are made so elegantly to show them off. And so the big change, of course, post-war, as you've seen in the last few examples, is the absence of all that fine lace, imitation lace work where you have to use the sewing machine to make all the lace-like patterns and then cut out all the extra fabric in between, to a more embroidered style. So I believe it was also more affordable, and that level of work just couldn't be achieved anymore. So we start seeing more kebayas with embroidery that sort of imitates either European or Chinese embroidery. And the lace work becomes simpler. Then you see this Karawang work, like the one on the right. They become less lace-like and much more standardized. I think it just became harder to achieve. So we see now just a very basic and consistent repertoire across kebaya makers of these filler lace-like patterns, but they don't really imitate lace anymore. And paired with really, much brighter sarongs and kain panjangs in the taste of the 50s. So then, it's sort of by the 60s, Nonya women Peranakan women were opting to wear Western fashions. And it just, from doing the Batik Nonias exhibition, I really understood from Jane Hendrik Matono, the third generation, that it was such a struggle to sell and make batik. So the market was so different from before the war. So it stopped evolving because there were less wearers. It was more expensive to make. And by the 60s and 70s, we start seeing in the newspapers, and like my mother's fashion show by 1976, it's traditional. It's become all, a revival.
No more daily wear.
Fashion. Yeah, it's not fashion anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's seen as a traditional dress form. It was never.
Yeah.
You can see how it's evolved, and then it's all stagnated in the 50s. And what a lot of Peranakan women wear as traditional sarong kebaya is basically 1950s style. It just stopped evolving. I mean, I was thinking, if you think in the Western context, right, it's like imagine 1950s Christian Dior, producing his whatever style, and there's a community of people still dressed that way. It's kind of odd when you think about it that way. It's beautiful as ever as anything, but yeah, somehow, well, the situation didn't lend itself to it to evolve, and so that's what we're more familiar with, right? This is how and what the kebaya looks to us nowadays. Just wanted to throw in a couple of just two pictures of how fantastic batik could be in the past. So these amazing examples, for example, this is a wedding scene, sort of pictorial scene, narrative scene. So unusual. And then you had the next one, which is this really fine type covered in gold leaf. I've seen one in a Peranakan family in Singapore that came from Indonesia. They also don't remember exactly in what context these were worn. I think they were only ever used once, but who knows? But they're extremely fine. Next. Yeah, and that's it. And it was just to say that, we have to remember that the Sarong Kebaya, like in the UNESCO bid, and thanks to Cedric for that. And also, I have to say, I mean, Cedric, you were very involved with one of the first big presentations of the kind of kebaya revival with Datin Endon, right? In the book. I mean, what year was that? Do you remember? So long ago.
2003.
Wow. And you were so actively involved in that. Datin Endon was pretty amazing for putting a collection together, wanting to do the book. And that sort of set the ball rolling from that time. And of course, you were very much involved with the UNESCO bid. In fact, I understand you kicked it off. One of the group, and among the people who kicked off this bid. And it's amazing. And so, well, thank you for that. I mean, so it's very timely that the second edition of the book is going to be republished. And I think it's what to me this bit is, opens up for our conversation is how, like what I am trying to say in my book, that it really emerged as a cross-cultural thing. Nobody owns it. I feel very concerned that that people might still think that it belongs to any one community, and the bit is really encouraging because it's seen as something truly cross-cultural. And from the 10 years of work that I did, that's what I discovered, that it emerged in the port cities, in mixed race communities, where the word kebaya and sarong became popular for garments. So both terms are not represented in any classical Malay context, in any manuscripts or any of the hikayats. They only appear in the late 19th to early 20th centuries. And so, and prior to that, we already see from 17th, 18th century, they are common Malay terms in the port cities. So their mixed race origins to me clear. And even for the word, so a tube skirt exists in tribal communities all over island Southeast Asia, but also in Thailand and South China. So across different people who spoke different languages and cultures, it has very old origins, and even the sarong form doesn't belong to any one community, the tube form, but the term sarong in classical Malay is used strictly in the sense of a sheath, so like a sarong keris or sarong bantal, sarong kaki. But as a garment, oldest references can be found in Batavia. Wow. So at some point, the Malay-speaking peoples of the old Dutch colonial capital, who were from all kinds of mixed races, started to use this term for the garment. And then it became the term throughout the Nusantara.
the
you know,
region. Yeah.
yeah. So it's
Yeah.
everybody. There's a lot of influences coming left, right, and every community contributed to its development, and it evolves in with its own nuances among each community. But it's also wrong to think that it is Peranakan. Of course, for us, the batik is undeniably Indonesian, and from Java, they made the best batik in the world, and sold it to everywhere. This is the Peranakans. We are deeply connected to Indonesia culturally, and the beautiful thing about this whole thing is we are able to see culture across borders, across communities, and in this very fractious time, I think it's incredibly important and relevant to. We need to be very kind of sharing and positive in how
Yeah.
we talk to each other.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Thank you.
That was such a enlightening and fantastic sharing, Peter. I'm sure Cedric got a few things to share, but before Cedric says anything, I'm just trying to read his mind. We'd just like to say hello to some of our people who said hello online. You have Lina, Music Lover 2894 from Singapore. She'd like to say good afternoon. And Tadi, we were talking about this lady. Then she also commented,
Hey.
Noreen Chan. Hi, Noreen.
Noreen.
She loves the jerky cards on the batik. I thought that was really amazing because if you look at the card itself, they're all individual cards. They're not the same
Are they correct?
card. Well, we can't see it in
30
detail.
cards. 30 different
They're
cards.
correct turkey
Imagine.
cards, not fantasy fake cards.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
they
because
were
I don't play
different.
turkey, so good to know.
Yeah, fantastic. It wasn't like one and then repeated. It was
No.
individual. Okay,
They
Cedric.
Really
was
research,
crazy.
they really research their stuff. I must say that this whole kebaya thingy and perhaps sarong thingy that has taken place over the past year, I must actually say a big thank you to Peter actually, because this was my Bible.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not going to be shy to say about it. Yeah, but because
In the
it's very
beginning.
factual. It's very very it helps us to understand the journey of the sarong and kebaya. Especially when we talk about how these garments transcend borders, especially in this archipelago, and so much so that when community say that it belongs to them only, it becomes like oh my gosh, it's something that
Very
we
territorial,
all,
right?
yeah, we should be gracious about it, that because it is something that we all wear it together. Yeah, there may be differences here and there, but we should celebrate those differences, and that's the
yeah,
reason
so
why.
fun.
Yeah,
I
that's the
love
reason why
the
we get so
nuances
many
and the
kinds
differences.
of attire. Yeah, we don't want one kind of attire for the whole archipelago. It makes it very boring, isn't it?
Yeah, but this applies to food as well. I think there are food
Exactly.
wars going on.
No, but I also think, when I did this project, I thought it would be a project where I could very quickly talk about the Sarong Kebaya as a way to symbolize or represent Peranakan identity. And the deeper I got, the more I realized it really wasn't Peranakan.
No,
I
not
mean,
at
like
all.
Peranakans didn't own it, right? And it's the same with the food. I mean, there's so many connections, and of course, Peranakans play a role in it. It was always about multi-directional dynamics. Influences going back and forth, but they're so enmeshed that you cannot separate. Many things. You can talk about a spectrum, and how certain groups maybe are more inclined to a certain style and all that, but it's really a kind of gray borders, and all connected and porous
So,
borders.
Peter, I wanted to ask you, yeah, after amassing a huge collection of sarongs, how do you keep them?
Oh yeah, well, I learned from a visit to the Kyoto Costume Institute in some time back. So they have one of the best fashion and textile archives in the world, and it seemed very simple. They just keep an aircon going at 24 degrees. That's all they do.
Wow. 24
And
hours.
the aircon provides a sort of natural. If you keep it on 24 hours, it provides a natural dehumidifying effect. but yeah, you cannot let it fluctuate. And thankfully nowadays, with the new aircons, they're all, you can set them to eco mode, and they're not really, energy guzzlers like in the past. But to care for, well, some people have wine fridges, so nothing wrong to have aircon rooms on for treasures
For
that we
Sarong.
might to
Yeah.
our duty to keep preserving them anyway.
Wonderful.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for sharing all these wonderful treasures to us. I mean, we can only awe and appreciate from
Yeah.
afar, but
In awe,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
No,
Yes,
actually, I keep them in the storeroom, and they're open to anyone who'd like to visit.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
an open
yeah,
invitation.
Friends call up, people call up or contact me, and I say, yeah, you have a group of friends, just come over, and I
Have
do
a-
that with the docents and textile lovers or anybody.
Right. Thank you for being so generous. I think we run out of time. But before we go, just to say a few hellos to our friends. Emily's asking, how are you? She's going to be on our next show. And Suzanne
Emily.
from KL, she says she fully agrees. And to totally wrap it up with our final comment, we have Mark Sebastian Rekaratnam. Southeast Asia was always the crossroads between cultures of East and West of the Asian continent. Dress, fashion, and the kebaya is symbolic of our openness to other cultures and people. Thank you to Peter for reminding us of our chill
Yay.
culture. Thank you, Mark, for that
Hey, Mark,
final comment.
Mark's done that amazing book on
Indeed, he
Christians.
has.
Hello, Mark.
Hello. So that's it. Thank you so much, Peter. It's a real pleasure and honor to have you on our festival. Thanks for
All
sharing.
the best, and thank you for organizing this.
Yeah, it's our pleasure to
How's it
bring our
going?
culture and our communities together. And Kamsia Baba Cedric Tan
Yes.
for once again co-hosting. I'm sure you enjoyed this one a lot.
definitely my pleasure,
Itulah.
especially having Peter on board.
That's why. So thank you, everybody. We're having our last final session at 5 p.m. in a very short while for some fun in Mari Mari. Merry Christmas, some fun and some songs. So thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, and Merry
Good
Christmas. to you.
five.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks.
Peter.
So
That was
great.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well,
Looking
thank
forward
you.
to
Us
your
the
next
journey.
book. Yeah,
Sorry?
I'm looking forward for your next book.
Well, no, it's the reprint of the book.
Yeah,
Because
I
it's
mean,
out
this
of
is
print.
only up to 1940s. I want 1940s onwards.
Oh, yeah. Oh, next one.
Akan
Yes,
datang.
looking
Oh,
forward.
it's a lot of work.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I mean,
so happy
really
it's being
awesome.
reprinted.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay,
Thanks,
gotta
Peter.
go.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Enjoy.
Peter.
Happy singing. Sorry, I can't stay on. I'm
It's
going
all right.
out now.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.